The snap the jungle air was thick, hot, and alive with the sound of things that hunted in the dark. Ethan's boots sank into the wet ground as he pushed forward, one arm holding the small alien girl close to his side. Lyra's breathing was shaky. Her thin legs trembled with every step. They had been running for hours behind them. The night wasn't silent. Anymore it was filled with the sharp, metallic calls of enemy trackers. The soldiers were coming, and they were bringing their hunting beasts. "Just a little more, Ethan," whispered, though he wasn't sure if it was for her or for himself. Lyra clung to his shirt, her pale green skin damp with sweat. She had never been this far from her city before. She had never been chased through a wild place like this, and she had never seen a human fight. Until today, they broke through a wall of tangled vines, and then the ground was gone. A ravine yawned before them, black and deep. The moonlight showed only a broken rope bridge swinging in the wind. Ethan's eyes darted left and right, no other way across. The soldiers' shouts grew louder. He didn't think. He acted. He stepped onto the bridge. The rotten wood groaned under his weight. "Hurry," he said, pulling Lyra behind him. Halfway across, one of the boards snapped under Ethan's foot. His leg went through the hole, and before he could catch himself, his whole body pitched forward. He slammed into the rope railing. There was a sharp crack. The sound was wrong, wet, final. Pain shot up his arm like fire. He glanced down. His forearm was bent at a sickening angle. Lyra gasped. In her world, a broken bone meant death. There were no healers here, no machines to fix it. To her, he was already as good as gone. Ethan's face twisted, but he didn't scream. Instead, he gritted his teeth, pulled his arm close to his chest, and with one quick, brutal motion, snap! The bone shifted back into place. The sound echoed through the ravine. Lyra's vision swam. Her stomach turned. She had never seen anything like it. Humans weren't just strong, they were insane. She opened her mouth to speak, but the world tilted. The sound of the jungle faded. Darkness rushed in. When she awoke, the first thing she felt was heat, not from the air, but from something warm wrapped around her shoulders. She blinked and saw Ethan's thick jacket draped over her. She was lying in a small hollow under the roots of a giant tree. Ethan sat nearby, tearing strips from his own shirt. His injured arm rested on his leg. With practiced hands, he tied the strips around two straight sticks, making a splint. Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. Why did you do that?" "Do what?" he asked without looking up. "You broke yourself more. You touched the bone." Her voice shook. "We don't touch broken bones. We wait. We say goodbye." Ethan gave a short, humorless laugh. "Humans don't wait for death. We fix ourselves and keep moving." Lyra stared at him. His skin was pale from pain, sweat glistening on his forehead, yet his hands didn't tremble. A low howl echoed in the distance. Ethan's head snapped up. "They're close." He tightened the splint, slung his bag over his good shoulder, and crouched beside her. "We can't stay here." "But—" "Your arm later," he said firmly. "Right now, we move." Lyra hesitated, but when he held out his good hand, she took it. His grip was warm and solid. The jungle ahead was dark, the kind of dark that seemed alive. Somewhere in that darkness, the enemy waited. Lyra didn't know if they would survive the night. But one thing was certain, humans were nothing like she had been taught. They didn't just fight. They refused to fall. Waking in the dark, the jungle at night was not quiet. Every few seconds, a hiss, a chirp, or a low growl came from somewhere unseen. The air was damp and smelled of wet leaves and rotting wood. Ethan moved through it like a shadow, one arm steadying Lyra as they pushed forward. His other arm, the broken one, was bound tight to his chest with the splint he'd made. Each step sent pain shooting up his shoulder, but his face stayed calm. Lyra kept glancing at him. It was strange. She had seen warriors from her people break down after minor wounds. She had seen the strongest of them beg for healers. But this human, he didn't even slow. The moonlight broke through the canopy for a moment, and Lyra caught a better look at his arm. The skin around the splint was already swelling, purple bruises crawling up toward his elbow. She winced, just looking at it. "You should rest," she said softly. "No time," Ethan replied. His voice was low but firm. "They'll find our trail by sunrise." Lyra bit her lip. "You can't fight with one arm." Ethan gave a small, almost amused smirk. "You'd be surprised." They moved for nearly an hour until the sound of rushing water filled the air. They came to a stream, its surface glowing faintly in the moonlight. Ethan knelt to drink, but before Lyra could follow, he held out a hand to stop her. "To still," he whispered. "Something's watching." Her ears twitched. She could hear it too now. A faint, wet breathing from the trees. Then it stepped into view. One of the enemy's hunting hounds, its body sleek and scaled, 4 glowing eyes fixed on them. Saliva dripped from its long jaw as it crouched low. Lyra's heart raced. "Run," she whispered. Ethan didn't move. "No. Running makes it chase harder." The hound took a slow step forward, growling. Ethan's hand drifted to the crude spear strapped to his back. He gripped it with his good arm and slowly raised it. "Stay behind me," he said without looking at her. The hound lunged. Ethan sidestepped, bringing the spear down in a single, brutal motion. The tip caught the beast's shoulder, spinning it to the ground. It yelped, then scrambled back into the trees, vanishing as quickly as it came. Lyra stared at him in shock. "With one arm, you still not my first time," he said, lowering the spear. "Come on, more will be close." By the time they found shelter, the moon was nearly gone. They came upon a shallow cave, its mouth hidden behind a wall of vines. Ethan pushed through and checked every corner before letting Lyra inside. She sat near the wall, hugging her knees. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying the moment she saw him snap his own bone into place. Finally, she asked, "Why would you do that? Doesn't it hurt too much?" Ethan was busy arranging a small pile of dry leaves for a fire. "It hurts," he admitted. "But pain isn't the enemy. Stopping is." She frowned. "In my world, pain is the sign to give up, to wait for help." He looked at her then, his eyes steady. What if help never comes? The question sank into her like cold water. She didn't answer. The fire crackled softly. The faint light made the cave feel smaller, more private. Ethan removed his jacket and checked his arm, adjusting the splint. His hands were steady, even as he pulled the bandages tighter. Lyra found herself staring again. "You don't fear it breaking again?" "I fear stopping," he said simply. "I stop, you get caught, and I don't want that." Her chest tightened. No one had ever spoken like that to her, not without expecting something in return. A distant horn echoed through the jungle. The enemy was signaling. They had found something. Ethan immediately smothered the fire with dirt. "They're close. We move at first light." Lyra didn't protest this time. She just nodded. When she lay down to sleep, she could still hear the slow, steady breathing of the human beside her. And for the first time that night, she realized if he could stand up after breaking his own bones, maybe she could learn to stand too. Blood and Rainlear's fingers burned from holding Ethan's weight. The broken boards groaned under her knees. The soldiers' shouts rose from below, and bullets bit into the cliff wall, spraying stone chips over them. Ethan's grip on the cable was slipping. His injured arm trembled from the strain, but his eyes were steady. "Pull," he said. voice low but firm. Lyra planted her feet against the edge of the walkway, leaned back, and pulled with all her strength. Her muscles screamed, but little. By little, Ethan's body came up. With one final heave, he rolled onto the boards beside her. For a second, neither of them moved, just gasped for air, the walkway swaying under their combined weight. Then Ethan forced himself up. "Go," he said. "The cave?" They crossed the last stretch as the wind pushed them side to side. Lyra stumbled once, but Ethan's good arm caught her and kept her moving. The darkness of the cave swallowed them. Whole dot inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of damp stone. Water dripped somewhere deeper in. Sitha leaned against the wall, clutching his side. His jacket was soaked not with water, but with blood. A dark patch spread over his ribs. Lyra's eyes widened. "You're hurt again." Ethan looked down as if he'd only just noticed. "Small cut? I've had worse." "It's not small," she said sharply. "You're bleeding too much." He gave her a lopsided grin. "Then we stop it. Simple." From his pack, he pulled a small roll of bandage, a needle, and a curved hook of metal. Lyra's skin crawled at the sight. "You're not going to." "I am," he said, cutting her off. "It'll hold until we find a real medic." She turned away as he threaded the needle with one hand and his teeth. The first stitch made a low hiss escape his lips, but he kept going. Lyra couldn't watch, but she couldn't walk away either. "You humans," she murmured. "You treat pain like it's nothing." Ethan tied off the last stitch and tore the thread with his teeth. "Pain is just a warning. You can hear it without obeying it." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain. A soft patter began, echoing through the cave mouth. In minutes, the sky opened and the sound turned into a roar. The rain poured so hard, it blurred the cliffs and drowned out the soldiers' voices. Ethan stepped to the edge, peering through the sheets of water. "The rain will hide our tracks," he said. "If we move now, we can lose them." Lyra hesitated. "You need to rest. You've lost blood, your arm. And if we stay," he said, "we're trapped." His tone was calm, but there was no arguing with it. They began climbing higher inside the cave. The walls narrowed, forcing them to walk single file. The floor was slick, and twice Lyra slipped, only to feel Ethan's hand steady her. Even injured, he never let her fall. They reached a ledge where the cave opened again to the outside, this time into a narrow canyon. Water rushed down the center in a brown torrent. Ethan scanned both sides, then pointed. "We take the ridge, faster than the canyon floor." The climb was brutal. Mud clung to their boots, making every step heavier. The rain plastered their hair to their heads. Ethan's breath came harder now, and Lyra could see his legs shaking with each push upward. "Stop," she said finally. "You're pushing too far." "Not far enough," he muttered, but his pace slowed. Halfway up, a figure appeared on the ridge ahead, a soldier. His rifle already raised. Ethan shoved Lyra behind him and dropped low, using a boulder as cover. "Stay down." The soldier fired. Stone shattered above them. Ethan didn't hesitate. He snatched up a loose rock and hurled it with his good arm. It struck the soldier's hand, and the rifle fell. Ethan moved fast, charging before the soldier could recover. The two collided, slipping in the mud, grappling for balance. The man swung a knife. Ethan caught his wrist and slammed it into the ground. His injured arm wasn't useless. He used it to pin the soldier's head while his good hand drove a fist into his jaw. The soldier went limp. Ethan took the rifle, checked the chamber, and slung it over his shoulder. He didn't even look at his fresh scrapes before saying, "Let's keep moving." By the time they reached the top, the rain had softened to a steady drizzle. The jungle stretched out below, mist curling over the treetops. Lyra turned to him, chest still heaving. "Why?" assessed suddenly. He frowned. "Why, what?" Keep fighting like this. For me, you could have left me. Ethan wiped rain from his eyes because I said I'd get you out. And when humans make a promise, he paused, meeting her gaze. We keep it. She didn't know what to say to that. In her world, promises were only as good as the advantage they brought. But this was something else entirely. They found a hollow beneath a leaning tree, just big enough to crouch under. Ethan sat down heavily, leaning back against the trunk. His face was pale now, his jaw tight. Lyra pulled a folded cloth from her pouch and began cleaning the cut on his ribs. He didn't stop her. You saved me again, she said quietly. He gave a tired smile. Not done yet. And as the rain drummed on the leaves above, Lyra realized that maybe, for the first time, she didn't feel like prey anymore. She felt protected. The enemies offered the rain slowed by morning. Mist hung low over the ridge, curling between the trees like pale smoke. Ethan stirred first, blinking away the heaviness in his eyes. His body ached in too many places to count, but he forced himself upright. Beside him, Lyra was still curled under the leaning tree, breathing slow, her hands tucked close to her chest. He let her sleep another few moments while he scanned the jungle below. The view from the ridge wasn't comforting. Somewhere beyond the fog, he knew the enemy was closing in. He touched the rifle he'd taken yesterday, checking the chamber. The metal was cold, the stock damped from rain, but it would work. His splinted arm hung stiff against his chest, useless for shooting, but enough to steady the weapon if needed. Lyra woke with a small gasp, her eyes darting until they found him. She relaxed a little. We're still here, she murmured. 4. Now, Ethan said. We move in 5 minutes. They began following the ridgeline. The ground was narrow, with steep drops on both sides. Every step had to be careful. Somewhere below, the sound of rushing water echoed another river. Or maybe a waterfall then. Faint at first came the sound that froze them both. A long, drawn-out horn call. Followed by another. Ethan stopped. That's not search, he said quietly. That's rally. Lyra's ears twitched. What does that mean? It means they've found us. The truth came seconds later, in the form of movement ahead. 4 figures stepped onto the ridge, their armor a dull green. Weapons slung casually, but ready. Behind them, more soldiers emerged from the mist. Cutting off the path behind, Ethan's eyes flicked from one group to the other. They were boxed in. The leader stepped forward, a tall alien male with patterned skin and black, glassy eyes. His voice carried easily. Human, we've watched you fight. Impressive for one of your kind. Ethan said nothing. The alien gestured toward Lyra. Hand over the girl. She is of interest to us. In exchange, we will grant you safe passage to the human outpost. No one will follow you. Lyra stiffened. She looked up at Ethan, her voice small. Don't listen. Ethan didn't move. Why do you want her? That is not your concern, the alien replied. But you must know you will not survive a fight here. Look at you. One arm useless. Blood loss, surrounded. This is your last offer. Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced at Lyra. Her eyes were wide, her hands clenched at her sides. He thought about every step since the jungle, her stumbling in the stream, her shaking on the beam, her pulling him back from the walkway's edge. He turned back to the alien. You've got one problem, he said flatly. I don't make deals that leave people behind. The alien's black eyes narrowed. It's foolish. The first shot came from the soldiers behind. Ethan yanked Lyra to the ground as the bullet whined. Past, he rolled behind a boulder, rifle up, and fired 3 sharp bursts. One soldier dropped, the others scattered. Stay low, he barked. Lyra scrambled into the shelter of a fallen log. The air was filled with the crack of gunfire, the sharp smell of burnt powder mixing with the damp mist. Ethan shifted positions, using every bit of cover the ridge offered, forcing the soldiers to keep their heads down. The leader shouted orders in a sharp, alien tongue. 2 soldiers moved to flank Ethan's left. He saw them coming but had no time to aim. He reached for the knife at his belt with his good hand and waited as they rounded the boulder. He surged forward, driving the knife into the first soldier's side, then swinging the butt of his rifle into the second's jaw. Both went down. Pain tore through his broken arm as he braced it against the rock, but he didn't let go of the rifle. He could feel the splint shifting, but there was no time. To fix it, the leader stepped forward, weapon raised. This ends now. Ethan's rifle clicked empty. Kay dropped it without hesitation and picked up one of the fallen soldier's carbines. His hands were steady, his breathing calm, even as he took aim. "Not yet," he said, before the leader could fire. Lyra moved. She darted from the log, scooped up a loose rock, and hurled it with surprising force. It struck the leader in the temple, making him stagger. Ethan didn't waste the opening 2 quick shots, and the leader collapsed. The remaining soldiers hesitated, then began to fall back into the mist, dragging their wounded. Silence returned, broken only by Lyra's uneven breathing. Ethan lowered the carbine and turned to her. "That was a good throw." She gave a shaky laugh. "You taught me. Watch. Wait. Move when they're looking the wrong way." He nodded. "Once, you listened." But inside, he knew the fight had cost him more than he wanted to admit. His arm throbbed in time with his heartbeat, and a deep ache had settled into his ribs. Lyra stepped closer. "You didn't even think about it, did you? You'd rather die than give me up. That's the deal," he said simply. "What deal? If I say I'm getting you to safety, then I am. Doesn't matter what it costs." They moved again, leaving the ridge and cutting down toward thicker forest where the mist would hide them. The gunfire had faded, but Ethan knew it wouldn't be the last time. The enemy had lost today, but they would be backhand next time. They wouldn't make offers. For now, though, Lyra walked a little closer to him, her shoulder brushing his. She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. Ethan wasn't saving her for thanks. He was saving her because she was his responsibility. And because somewhere in this jungle, that meant more than anything else. The breaking point, the forest was thicker now, the canopy blocking most of the daylight. Shafts of pale green light cut through the leaves, catching the drifting mist. Every sound felt closer here, the call of unseen birds, the creak of branches. The slow drip of water from above. Ethan moved carefully, keeping his steps quiet. Lyra followed close, her eyes scanning the shadows. The ridge fight had shaken her, but it was Ethan who seemed changed. His steps were slower, his breathing was heavier. She could see the strain in his jaw, the way his good hand trembled when it wasn't holding his weapon. His broken arm was swelling badly under the splint, the skin stretched tight. Dried blood stained his jacket and the bandages at his ribs. "Ethan," she whispered, "we should stop just for a little." He shook his head. "If we stop, they'll catch up. Another hour and we'll be in the mountains. From there, it's easier to lose them." But an hour was too long. She could see it in the way his boots dragged just a little more with each step. They crossed a shallow creek, water running cold over their ankles. Ethan stumbled on a slick stone and dropped to one knee. He caught himself before falling, but stayed down longer than he should have. Lyra crouched beside him. "You need to rest." Yet," he said. "You keep saying that," she replied, her voice tight. "But what happens when you can't move at all?" He gave a faint, almost amused smile. "Then you'll drag me." It was meant as a joke, but it wasn't funny. Not when she could see how pale he'd become. They moved on, but 10 minutes later, Ethan's pace slowed even more. His breathing was ragged now when he stopped suddenly. She thought he'd heard something until his knees buckled and he caught himself against a tree. Ethan. Lyra grabbed his arm, his good arm, and steadied him. His weight was heavy against her shoulder. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice was hoarse. "You're not fine?" She shot back. For the first time, he didn't argue. She guided him off the trail into a small hollow between two moss-covered boulders. It was sheltered and hidden from view. Ethan sank down with his back against the rock, eyes half closed. Lyra dropped her pack and began digging through it. "You've done enough. My turn." "You don't," he started, but she cut him off. "No, you've been holding me up since the moment we met. You fought for me, bled for me, and now you'll let me help." Her hands trembled, but she kept moving. She peeled back the soaked bandage on his ribs. The wound was angry and red, the stitches holding but surrounded by dried blood. She cleaned it with water from her canteen, biting her lip every time he flinched. From her pouch, she took out a small crystal vial filled with pale blue liquid. Ethan eyed it warily. "What is that?" "Extract from the morel plant," she explained. "It cleans and numbs. Stronger than anything your medics carry." She poured it slowly over the wound. Ethan hissed, his hand tightening into a fist. But then his breathing eased as the numbing effect took hold. "You've been carrying that the whole time?" he asked. "Yes," she admitted, "but it's rare. I didn't want to waste it." He gave her a look that was half amusement, half disbelief. "You think using it on me is a waste?" She met his eyes. "Not anymore." When she moved to check his arm, he tried to wave her off. "It's fine." "It's not fine," she said, unwrapping the splint. The swelling had worsened, but the alignment held. She adjusted the supports, tightening the bindings with surprising skill. Ethan studied her as she worked. "Where'd you learn that?" "From healers," she said quietly. "I watched when I wasn't supposed to." When she finished, she sat back and looked him over. "Better." He tested the arm carefully, then nodded. "Better." They rested there for a while. The jungle noises faded into the background, replaced by the quiet between them. Lyra sat beside him, knees drawn to her chest, eyes on the shadows moving in the leaves above. After a long silence, Ethan spoke. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," she said simply. "Why?" She turned her head toward him. "Because I don't want to survive this without you." The words landed heavier than she expected. She hadn't planned to say them. But they were true. They left the hollow when the light began to fade. Ethan moved steadier now, the morel extract dulling his pain. But the quiet between them wasn't the same, it was warmer. Like something unspoken had passed between them as they climbed toward the mountains. Lyra walked just a little ahead, glancing back often to make sure he was still there. And Ethan, though he didn't say it, knew that from this point on, survival wasn't a one-way effort anymore. A new legend dawn came slow over the mountains, a thin gray light pushing the shadows away. Ethan and Lyra climbed the last ridge in silence. The air was thin and cold now. Their clothes were damp. Their bodies were tired. But the morel medicine had done its work. Ethan could stand straight again, and his eyes were clear. They reached a shoulder of stone and stopped. Below them lay a long valley cut by a dry riverbed. On the far side, half hidden by rock and brush, a short mast rose from the ground, a metal rod with a small disc on top. Lyra pointed. "What is that?" "Human sensor," Ethan said. "If we touch its grid, the outpost will see us. If the enemy touches it first, the outpost will see them too." Lyra studied the valley. The floor was open, with few places to hide. A hawk circled slowly above. The quiet felt wrong. Ethan scanned the slopes. They'll expect us to cross in the open. Drones first, then hounds, then soldiers. Lyra took a breath. Then we do what you taught me. Watch, wait, move when. They looked the wrong way. They waited. A faint hum reached them. A small drone drifted over the far ridge, nose glowing a dull green. It began a slow sweep of the valley. Ethan checked the strap on his arm and the fresh binding on his ribs. We go on my mark. Left to right, stay low. If I fall, Lyra cut him off. If you fall, I pull you up. We already practiced that. His mouth tipped in a small smile. Right on 3. 1, 2. They ran. The valley floor felt huge under the morning sky. Dust puffed from their boots. The drone turned toward them at once, its sensor cone brightening. Lyra heard the hum grow sharper as it locked on. Their heat, cover. Ethan called, pointing to a broken slab. They dropped behind it as a thin beam swept the dust where they had been. Lyra's hand closed over a smooth stone. Her heart pounded, but her mind was clear. She remembered the ridge, the leader's black eyes, the rock leaving her hand like a message. She stood, took a breath, and threw. The stone struck the drone's sensor. The glow flickered. The drone wobbled, clipped a jagged branch, and dropped into the dust with a flat, shocked hum. Ethan stared at the smoking shell. "Good arm," he said. "You taught me," she said softly. They moved again. The dead drone still sent a message to someone, because hounds began to bark in the distant short, excited yelps, as if the morning itself had teeth. Halfway across the valley, tripwire glint showed in the dust a thin metal line, set knee-high between two rusted stakes. Lyra grabbed Ethan's sleeve and pulled him short. "Wire," she whispered. He followed the line with his eyes to a small lump under the Sanda mine. He nodded once, approval in his face. "Your eyes are better than mine today." They stepped over carefully and pressed on. A shadow flashed across the ground. Another drone. This one came on faster, nose bright as a small star. Ethan raised the stolen carbine and fired a short burst. The drone jerked, rose, and arced away. Damaged, but still in the air. He knew it would bring more. They had seconds. They hit the dry riverbed. The dirt here was softer, marked by old water lines and pockets of cracked clay. A low dust devil spun and died near their boots. On the far bank, the sensor mast stood just beyond a ring of small stones. "Grid edge," Ethan said. "We cross there. The outpost will see us." Lyra nodded. Somewhere behind them, the dogs' voices rose. She could hear feet, now 2 heavy boots on loose rock. 3 steps, Ethan said, voice calm. Then, "We're under friendly guns." They stepped into the ring. A sharp tone sounded from the mast. Across the valley, rock slid back and a narrow door opened. 2 figures appeared, heads low, silhouettes crisp against the dark. Human helmets. Human. Rifles. Hold. One shouted, "Hands up, who's with you?" 2 friendlies, Ethan called. 1 injured. Enemy close. Open the line. The gate widened with a grind of metal. More rifles leveled. Move. They moved. Bullets cracked from the slope. Behind, dust leaped at their heels. The hounds broke from brush and sprinted. Jaws wide, 4 eyes bright with hunger. "Down!" A voice roared from the gate. A machine gun spoke. The air shook. Dust blew back into Lyra's face. She felt the heat of the barrel without seeing it. The first line of hounds fell in a ragged heap, sliding in the dirt. The rest skidded and turned, confused, then fled the way they came. Ethan and Lyra crossed the threshold. The gate slammed down like a hammer. Inside, the air smelled of oil, hot metal, and coffee. Ethan's legs folded. He did not fight it this time. He sat hard, then eased onto his side, finally letting the weight leave him. The world seemed to rush past his face and settle at last. Medics ran forward, cutting straps, peeling back bandages. One pressed a mask to his mouth. Another checked his arm with quick, firm fingers. "Clean break," the medic said. "Held in the field. Who did the splint?" "I did," Lyra said. The medic glanced at her, then nodded. "Good work." A captain crouched beside Lyra. His beard was gray. His eyes were kind. "You brought him in." "Tell me what happened," Lyra told him, in simple words. "The jungle, the bridge, the fall. The bone that snapped wrong and then snapped right because a human chose to stand. The hounds, the fire. The ridge and the offer she begged him not to take. The rock she threw. The way he would not stop." Her voice did not shake. When she finished, the captain looked at Ethan already, drifting under a calm drugging. Then at her again. "He's going to be fine," the captain said. "We'll set the arm, clean the ribs, fix the blood loss. He'll yell at us in 2 days and ask for his boots in 3. Lyra let out a breath she did not know she was holding. She touched Ethan's shoulder. "I will wait," she said. "Then wait here," the captain said. "You earned it." They moved Ethan onto a stretcher and carried him toward the clinic tunnel. Lyra walked beside him, never letting her hand leave the cloth near his shoulder. At the clinic door, a nurse gently moved her aside. "Give us a little time," the nurse said. "We'll call you when he wakes." Lyra nodded and sat on a bench outside. She watched Boots pass, heard voices, smelled coffee and hot soup. The sound of the machine gun faded to memory. The mountains felt far away, like a story someone else had told. An hour passed, maybe 2. The clinic door opened. The nurse smiled and waved her in. Ethan lay on a clean bed, his arm in a firm cast, his chest wrapped tight. His eyes were heavy but bright. "You made it," he said, voice rough. "You too," she said, stepping close. Her smile was small and real. "I didn't faint this time." He laughed once, then winced, then laughed again anyway. "Proud of you." Lyra looked at the white cast, at the neat lines of the bandages, at the way the room held heat and light and safety. She thought of her people, how they feared injury like a curse, how they whispered goodbyes at the first sign of a break. "We'll tell them," she said. "I will tell them you broke your bones back into place and kept going. I will tell them pain is not the end. Stopping is." Ethan's eyes softened. "Tell them another thing, too." "What?" "Tell them we don't do it alone." "Not really." She understood. She took his hand. His fingers squeezed weakly, but the grip was there, the same grip that had pulled her over broken boards and through fire and across the valley. Days later, when the enemy scouts whispered about the one-armed human who fought through rain and smoke, they gave him a name, the man who snapped the bone and would not fall. When Lyra told the story to her people, they gave him another. One who walked through pain. Both names were true. But the part she loved most was simple. A human stood up, again and again, and taught her to stand too. And that was how the legend began.